Ms. Goodman's classes. I'm going to walk you through the process of creating an annotated bibliography for National History Day using all of the source citations that you've collected up to this point. We'll go through some examples and you can either follow along or wait till the end and then do it on your own. So let's walk through the process. There are 5 parts to creating an annotated bibliography and formatting it successfully. So first, we're going to partially format our Google Doc. We're not going to fully format it. We'll do that more towards the end. We're going to identify our primary and secondary sources, as well as the types of sources that you have. You're going to alphabetize as you go. I will show you how to do that. Then you're going to work on the hanging indention, which is really tricky, but I'll show you 2 different ways that you can successfully do that. And then we are going to finalize the format so everything is ready to go and finished looking nice. So for this first part, we want to just partially format our page, not fully format it. So you're asked to format your paper according to MLA. And the basics for formatting are to set your font to Times New Roman font, to set it to 12 point, which is the size. And then we're going to talk about spacing a little bit later on, but to start with, you're going to keep everything single spaced because it's just going to be a little bit easier to do the full spacing at the end. So for now, you're going to keep everything single spaced. And then as you plug in your source citations and your annotation paragraphs, you're going to make sure that there is a space between each of those things as you work through. I'm going to be using this example annotated bibliography document, and you're welcome to look at the final product here. It is linkable. But first, I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to work through the process of setting up a blank one from scratch. So you have a blank Google Doc. This is going to be your annotated bibliography. The first thing you need to do is you need to change the font. So we're going to change it to Times New Roman font. Mine is at the top. If you can't see yours at the top, scroll down until you find it. So it's Times New Roman, and you are going to adjust the font size to 12-point font. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is when you title your document, you want the title to be centered, aligned. So this is your alignment. Click here, then click center align, and your document is going to be titled Annotated Bibliography. And then you're going to press enter once, and you're going to move back over to the left. Okay, so this is your annotated bibliography. You're not to title it anything else. You don't need to make the title big. Keep it 12 point. Keep it simple. Okay. Then you can press enter once more. So we have one space between our title and our first part. So you are going to organize all of your sources by primary and secondary. And then Ms. Goodman is also asking you to organize within each of those sections by type. So it might be journal articles, it might be photographs, it might be websites, stuff like that. For our purposes, I'm just going to keep it primary and secondary because I don't know what other sources you have. But we're going to do primary sources, and we're going to do a couple spaces, and then we're going to say secondary sources. Okay, so you should have a sources journal slides with all of your sources in the slides. So what we're going to do is we are going to work on plugging in those sources. So that is our next part. Okay, so as we plug in our sources, we need to identify first whether or not they are primary sources or they're secondary sources. And then after that, if you have something like a journal article or a website, you're going to be organizing within that. So for us, we have primary sources, secondary sources. You might also have something like websites for primary and secondary sources, right? Photographs, whatever it is. You can do all that other stuff. I'm going to keep mine blank because all I have is just primary and secondary sources. I'm not going to organize for type, but you can do that. So looking at my sources journal, I've got a citation here. You are going to highlight this citation and you are going to copy and paste it into either primary or secondary sources. Okay, so as you get your first source in here, you should be good to go. So I'm going to take some sources from ones that I've already got a chunk here. Okay. So this is, for example, my first primary source. I have, this is the source itself. I want to make sure that I've got a space between primary and the first source. And you're going to do the same thing for your secondary source. You can bold primary sources and secondary sources if you would like, so you can kind of quickly see the differences. It's up to you. But I have my first source here, and then I want to make sure that I have an enter between that extra space between the source and the source annotation. Okay, and then I move on from there. So you're going to be copying and pasting them in. So first thing, again, identify is it a primary or secondary source, so you know which category it goes in. If you have more types after that, make sure you put it in the correct category. Within each category, you're going to need to make sure that you copy and paste alphabetically. So I recommend alphabetizing as you go. It is significantly easier this way. It gets really messy if you put all of your sources in together and then have to alphabetize. It can be done. It's just a little bit messier. So I got my first source in. It's good to go. All the spacing is correct, and I just need to plug in the rest of my sources. Okay, so as we go through this process, there are a couple of things that you need to realize as you alphabetize. Alphabetizing your sources can be really tricky. So as a librarian, we're always alphabetizing. We put books on the shelves according to author. Sometimes we do it by number and then author, depending if it's nonfiction or fiction. So me and the library aides, we're always singing the ABCs in our head because alphabetizing is tricky. You don't just know it. There's a little bit of processing that's involved. So the big thing to remember with alphabetizing is that you only alphabetize your sources according to the first phrase of your citation, that first word or sentence, or or phrase, like if it's just or the, that first part is what you alphabetize. Numbers are always, always, always going to go first. So if you have citations that start with a number, that citation with the number is going to go before any of your letter sources. If you have multiple sources that start with a number, they should be ordered from the smallest number to the biggest number. So if you have, for example, let's go to my, what I have here. My first source starts with 14th. So if you had one that started with 1940s, 1940 is a larger number than 14, and so 1940 would go below here. Okay, so let me show you, because I have a source that is like that. So the next one here, I've got a 1940s here. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it over here. So 14th comes first, then 1940s. Okay. And I make sure I've got all my enters between everything. If you have a situation where, so do your numbers first, then move to letters. All of your A sources are going to go after numbers. All of your A sources will go first, then your B sources, and so forth. So this is where it gets really tricky. What if it happens that you have more than one source that starts with the same letter? Okay, so you're inevitably going to have sources that start with the same letter. So if I have a source that starts with A, and then I also have a source that starts with Ahmad, like an author's last name, the A source has to go first, followed by Ahmad. So if I have a source that says, if the title is there and it's something, 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 and then I also have a source that is Ahmad, like an author's last name, Ahmad, comma, whatever, the Ahmad source is going to go second because it has an H after the A. The first source, just A, doesn't have anything after it. Okay. Same thing. Let's say I have two authors' names. I have an arbor and an artist. The arbor source is going to go first, followed by the artist. And the reason why is because the first two letters are the same, A and R, but the third letter is where it's different, and B comes before D. So arbor is going to be first rather than artist. So if you have a source with the same letter, starts with the same letter, move to the second letter. If the first and the second letter are the same, move to the third letter and alphabetize that way. Okay, next, what if you have multiple sources from the same author, so they are basically exactly the same? You have to go through the same process as what we did in the above slide. So here's an example. I have two sources from R.W. Davies. Okay, everything is exactly the same in his name, all the way up until the W. And then I get into parts that are different. I have et al., the economic transformation, yada, yada. And then for here, I have Soviet economic development, yada, yada. So which one's going to go first? Well, all the way up to Davies R.W., everything is exactly the same. So I need to look after that. E comes before S in the alphabet. And so source number 1 is going to be right before source number 2. Okay? Okay, so let's walk through the process. I want to show you this example annotated bibliography document. I have primary sources and I have secondary sources, and they're all mixed up, and I need to put them in alphabetical order. And so I'm going to go through the process with you just so you can see what it looks like. Hopefully you will be doing this as you copy and paste over, so it's a little bit easier and not as messy. This is going to be a little messy. So if you have all of your sources just plugged in here and you've only organized them by primary and secondary, and now you have to alphabetize, we need to go through that process. So I'll show you what that looks like. So first, we're just going to work in primary sources. If I had another section that was websites and I had a handful of sources underneath the websites, I would cite within just that section. So I'm only going to cite within primary sources for now. So I have 14th straight win, yada, yada. And then I have, this is where the annotation starts. So I'm going to press enter so I can put an extra space. Now I need to figure out what goes next after 14th. I have day, I have Gallup, I have cosmonaut, I have another number, and then I have a couple other letters. So a number always goes before letters. So we are going to cut this using Control X. I'm going to find the end of my first source, and I'm going to paste. So this is my next source. 1940s comes after 14th. And I'm going to put an enter between my source and my annotation. Okay, so all the number ones are done. Now I need to know what is next. So A, I don't have any A sources. I don't have any B sources. I do have C sources. Okay, so here's another tricky part. My C sources both start very similarly. One is cosmonaut and one is cosmonauts. Cosmonaut is going to go first. It doesn't have an S on the end. This longer one, because it has the S on the end and it's one more letter, is going to go second behind it. So it'll be this one followed by this one. And I can just copy and paste both of those together because they're already in the correct order. I'm going to cut those. I'm going to move just below my 1940s, and I'm going to paste. So now I have 14th, 1940s, cosmonaut, cosmonauts. So I have my C's done. Next is D. I have day, D-A-Y, and diamond. So the D is the same. So now we need to look at the second letter. The second letter for this one is an A, and the second letter for this one is an I. So day is in the right spot. It's first, followed by diamond. So I'm going to cut this and put this source after day. Okay, and then last is G, and that's all organized. So I'm going to clean everything up a little bit to where I have, I've got all these little extra spaces removed. I want to make sure that I have an extra space between the source, citation, and the paragraph that goes with it. I'm just going to press enter once. That's it. Nothing too crazy. Just making sure that there's a space there. Okay, and we're good. So now for secondary sources, I'm going to do the same thing. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sources for secondary sources. A, B, C. C is first. Let's cut that and move it above. My spaces. Next is D. This is the example I used earlier. I have Davies et al. And Davies Soviet Economic. So Davies RW is exactly the same, but et, the E in et al. Comes before the S in Soviet. So this source is going to be first, followed by this source. So I'm going to cut it and I'm going to paste it. Put my space, my enter. Okay, and then my last source is sit-ins, which is an S, so that's last. Okay, so I have it all cleaned up, ready the way it needs to be. I have my primary sources. I have my secondary sources. These are all good to go. I have spaces between each citation and its paragraph. Nothing extra, just one space. So now we're going to move on to this next part. This is the indention part. And it's really important that you pay attention to the way that you do this. So there are 2 different ways that you can do this. And step 1 through 4 is exactly the same for both of these ways. And then after step 4, you do something different. So I'm going to show you the first way to make a hanging indention, and then I'll show you the second way. So the first part, step 1 is to make sure that if you have a citation that has one line, that's only one line, it's basically done and ready to go. So we're only looking at the citation part. So this citation is my only citation that takes up one sentence. That one's good and ready to go. If you have all your other citations that take up more than one sentence, you need to indent every line after that first line. They need to be tabbed over. So this is where this is the most important thing that you need to do. As of right now, I only have a space between evening and bulletin, and I only have a space between university and libraries. Okay, what you need to do is you need to, instead of having a space, you need to press enter and break the line. The computer thinks that this is all one sentence and that it's all together. You have to break it. You have to break it and make it into one line here and one line here. Okay, so we're going to break the line and it's going to look like nothing happens, but something does. And the best way to know that you've broken a line is to do a backspace. So on your second line, you're going to do a backspace. This is how we know that there are no spaces there. And then you need to press enter. Break the line. It looks like nothing changed. It looks just like it just looks just like a space. But you've broken the line. The computer understands what that means. And now you can indent. Okay, so we are going to highlight all the parts that we want to indent. We want to indent all the lines after that first citation, and we also want to indent this whole entire paragraph. So you can highlight everything. You have to do this citation by citation. Highlight everything after that first line, and then you're going to see a little blue arrow with a little top on top of it, okay? We need to indent 1/2 inch over. So from this blue part until your 1, that's a whole inch. We need to indent 1/2 inch, which is going to be to this line. So you need to click and hold on the arrow and drag the whole entire thing halfway. It's going to indent everything here, and then you're good to go. Now I want to show you what will happen if you don't break the line, and it's going to be really frustrating. So I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to backspace, and I'm going to put a space there so you can see what happens. So if I tell the computer I want all of this to be indented, and I click here and I move it over, it's going to indent the whole entire thing because it doesn't see a break between this first line and the second line. It thinks it's all part of the same thing, because it is. It's all part of the same sentence. I didn't break it. So I have to break it, okay? So if I go back, backspace, press enter, break the line, and then you can tab everything after that up to the next one, okay? So then you'll repeat the process. Backspace just to make sure, press enter, highlight everything here, take this little guy and tab over. Good to go. Okay, so repeat that for every single one. So I'm going to show you a different way. This is the second way to indent. I personally think it's easier, but it's the way I've done it for years and I'm really fast at it. So the next way to do this is you still have to break the line, but instead of taking the little arrow and dragging it halfway, you press tab. And for ones that involve multiple sentences, you have to press tab a couple times and then backspace, and it will align itself. So I'm going to press the backspace. I'm going to press enter, break the line, and then I'm going to press the tab button. Then for this one, I don't have to press enter. It's already its own thing. I'm going to press tab twice. You're going to see it start to move everything over. And then I'm going to press backspace because I want that top line to even itself out. So you'll press tab, tab, backspace. Okay, so let's go through the process here. Enter, tab, 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 backspace. Enter, tab, 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 backspace. Okay. Oops. Now I want to show you what it looks like. Let's say we have a really large source like this one. I want to show you what this might look like if you need to, let's see, if for here, for a citation that has multiple, like more than just the 2 lines, if I press enter and I press tab, you're going to go through the same process. It'll look the same way, tab, tab, backspace. Okay, and you just do that all the way down. Enter tab, 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 backspace. So again, if you want to, you can get pretty quick at it. If you want to highlight everything and then just move the arrow, you can do that. It's up to you how you do this. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish formatting everything. Break the line, tab, backspace, break the line, tab, whoops. Break the line, tab, 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 backspace. Okay, our entire paper is formatted now. Get rid of any extra lines here that we don't need. Okay, we're at exactly 2 pages. So everything is all spaced out. all tabbed over, looking good. So next I'm going to bring your attention to the spacing part. So this is a couple suggestions on spacing, and ultimately you can kind of decide how you want to do this, but I think that this is the best way of doing it for everybody's eyes. So according to MLA, MLA says that you have to have a paper double spaced. NHD, the judges don't seem to really hold strict spacing rules. So if you don't follow the double spaced rule, that's fine as far as your annotated bibliography goes. What I personally recommend, what I like and what I think looks good is doing a 1.15 space. So this gives just a little bit of extra space in between all of your citations and your annotated paragraphs, that it's easier for your audience to read. Okay, so think of this as a courtesy to your audience. You're helping them out so they can kind of read it a little bit easier. So what you need to do before you do this final spacing is make sure that you have put that extra space between each source, the citation and its paragraph. And then make sure that you, make sure that you press enter between all of those things so it's all good to go. So, and then this next part, what we're going to do is we are going to, skip the title, skip primary sources. After that, you are going to highlight everything all the way down here. You're going to go to the spacing feature. This is line spacing, and you're going to click on 1.15. If you want to go up to 1.5, that's fine too. It's really up to you. If you do 1.15, it gives us that little extra space. You can see this looks really clean and neat, and that's what we want. Okay? So after that, you are done. I honestly, I highly recommend that you do this whole entire spacing thing at the very end. Keep everything single spaced at the beginning and then do the final spacing at the end. So that way you don't have any funky issues every time you break a line and move it over, and you won't have funky extra gaps in places. And that's it. You are done with your annotated bibliography. As always, if you have questions or if you need help, you can fill in the request for help form, or if you want to just shoot me an email, that's fine. We can schedule some time to meet. You can get some help for NHD, whether it's looking for sources or working on your annotated bibliography or anything like that. So I hope this helped. I will talk to you guys later.